Freddy's got a perverse interest in paranormal possession. Here's your relook at the NECA Toys Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy's Revenge Retro Cloth Freddy Krueger. From Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, the man of your dreams is back as a retro cloth figure. Freddy comes with two interchangeable heads, interchangeable gloved hand and bladed hand, unique to the Part 2 version of Freddy. A removable hat, blister packaging, and custom illustrated art and resealable protective clamshell. Before we decide to head back to Elm Street and have a relook at the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy's Revenge Retro Cloth Freddy from the folks over at NECA Toys, let's go ahead and grab the disc here, my tape measure of choice, just to see how tall the figure stands. I don't think I did this the first time I had a look at this figure those many years ago. Retro Cloth Freddy, though, from Part 2 stands 7 inches in height, or the figure's going to be roughly about 18 centimeters tall. Might as well compare rotten apples to rotten apples, so we'll slide over the Retro Cloth Freddy that we're about to have a look at and bring in the ultimate Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Obviously, size is one thing that's different between the two, but you may also notice, too, the colors seem a little bit brighter on the Retro Cloth Freddy. We'll do more comparisons of the two figures' head sculpts in a second. The obvious one also being the fact that somebody has taken the time to knit Freddy's sweater, something that the Ultimate release would not have had. In regards to Freddy's accessories, in regards, aren't we proper? The figure comes included with a wet fedora. What? We'll talk more about that in a second. Figure comes also included with the bladed fingered hand, and the figure also comes included with an interchangeable head sculpt that exposes Freddy's brains. Delicious Freddy's brains. First things first, talking a little bit about the puzzling nature of a wet fedora. Doesn't it look like Freddy's been walking around in the rain? The whole top of the fedora is all notably not wet to the touch, but it certainly has been added a clear coat that does look like Freddy's gotten his hat a little on the more wet side. Just to compare it to the one we actually get with the Ultimate release, not only is the Ultimate also a softer plastic, you can't do this with this fedora, it's a much more denser plastic, but you can also see as well that the Ultimate fedora seems to come across more like dry, well, obviously dry, and it has actually more of a darker coloring. This fedora not only having what seems more like a clear coat that they've added on top of it to give it that more wet look, but it also has several different colors of brown that they've added in there as well. I think actually this is a nicer looking fedora, although I still would have to question why it actually looks like Freddy's gotten it wet between the two fedoras. This, of course, will fit onto Freddy's head just like that. The fedora notably does actually sit a little more on the loose side. You wouldn't be able to do the blizzard test of tipping Freddy upside down. First of all, that's going to take him right off. And also, the fedora is going to fall right off of his head. So we're not going to do that. Not going to do it. Figure also comes included with the bladed finger hand. I decided, though, to start off this review, seeing after all that this is a re-review of a figure I had a look at years ago, I was going to actually try to keep him closer to the way he looked like in the packaging. That's why he has this head sculpt right now, and that's why he has this gloved hand on right now. But when I actually had this guy displayed for a while, I had him displayed with the brain head, and I had him displayed with the fingers sticking out, with the blades sticking out of the fingers. The blades have actually survived pretty good for the amount of time I've had this guy packed away. They're not bent, they're not warped. I don't think we're requiring any little bit of heat to bending them or straightening them back in place. The detailing done to the hand, the scarring is nicely done, sculpted and painted. And again, my preferred way of displaying the figure. What's yours? Let me know down below. And then, of course, he also comes included with his brain head. This is a head sculpt I really do like quite a lot. Just to compare it with the one that we get here with the Ultimate release. We'll go back to the same idea I had that retro cloth figures at times seem to be better painted than what we get with the Ultimate releases. Like the Ultimate Freddy Krueger head sculpt, as good as it may be, seems a little bit more muddier. That I feel like the face sculpt seems clearer on the retro cloth release that we actually get here than the Ultimate release. Pretty much the same head sculpt. I would say, if anything, maybe the tongue is slightly darker here in the Ultimate release. It's a little bit more lighter of a pink on the retro cloth. That's about it. Brains are exposed in both the cases. Again, I like the coloring on the brain on the retro cloth more than I like the one that we actually get here from the Ultimate release. It's just a lot of the same color again and again. The brain at least is more different in color. You can definitely notice right away it's a different thing from the rest of his face. I'm going to put this onto Freddy's head or neck in a second. First, though, let's go ahead and pick the figure up. I'm going to remove his fedora. First, just to show you what it looks like with the fedora. Again, if you wanted to display the figure with the fedora, let me just put it on top of his head. There we go. Very, very nice. But again, like the Fedora sits way too loose. You can go ahead and take that right off and get a closer look at Freddy's face. The thing notable about the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy Krueger design is actually they based the design more on a male witch. So you can see, like, for example, the scarring is a lot more closer together. It actually just looks like a charred victim here. His eyes also were notably brown in this movie, and he also had more of a distinct hook on his nose and pointier looking ears. And again, just to bring the one in from the Ultimate release, you can see the difference between the two. This one seems a little more shinier. It definitely is a lot more darker and purple in color. This one actually more as a more familiar Freddy Krueger flesh tone color. This one's nice, but I think I still like the idea of the retro cloth release a little bit more than the Ultimate release. Again, you can decide for yourself down below. The thing I also really like about the retro cloth version of Freddy is that his eyes seem a little bit more darker. They've done a nice job of actually shadowing these sections of his eyes, where like the areas of the sockets of Freddy in this case actually seems like it's just the rest of the coloring that he has on the rest of his head sculpt. I do like, again, the contrast, the darker colors that they used here for Freddy. And again, before we swap things out, this is Freddy's glove here. Some additional nicely added gold here. Some nice bronze that they've also added in there. And of course, he does have the longer finger blades. For me, at least, when it came to displaying this guy for the while that I had him on display, I usually had the glove off. And again, I usually had it replaced with the finger blade. I think for me, at least, if I was to display him with the more defaulted head sculpt, I probably would then revert back to displaying him with the glove. As you can already see, the glove is pretty easy to remove. You just simply remove it by the peg. And then we could go ahead and just replace it now with the finger blade hand. There we go. Now, with the head sculpt, I may have to actually take a bit of a cutaway because the head was really tight to remove. I didn't want to certainly break the peg on the inside, so just again to quickly show you what the head sculpt looks like. Really nice work on NECA's part, giving us a retro cloth Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. But again, what we'll do is we'll pop the head sculpt off. I may have to again heat it up with a little bit of a hairdryer trick, or submerging it a little bit in hot water, because again, that peg was a little more reluctant when it came to removing the head from the neck. Didn't end up needing to give Freddy a bath, although it did require me having to run a few passes with the hairdryer. That's the sound of a hairdryer. And I was finally able to remove the defaulted head, and in favor of swapping it out with I feel to be the better of the two. This one has Freddy Krueger yelling, for example. You've got the body, I've got the brains. And then, of course, exposing the brains onto the top. Mentioned already, but I like the idea that at least the coloring of the brains is different from the coloring of his face, so it's easy to spot right away. And, of course, when it comes to displaying this figure for the longest time, I had displayed this combination. You don't have to commit to the idea of displaying it exactly like this. If you wanted to use the Freddy glove, you could certainly do that as well. And, yeah, if you still wanted to display him with the fedora, that works too. Just again, the fedora sits incredibly loose here on the figure's head. Just pop that in place. There we go. Just to show you what it looks like. The brains, though, I feel are too good of a sculpt just to leave covered by the fedora, so I generally like to leave it off. And that's for the longest time, that's the way I had Freddy displayed. As for the rest of his outfit, now here's the thing I have the problem with when it comes to this figure. You may already notice this for yourself, that Freddy has an incredibly baggy sweater. Technically, his body isn't as thick as maybe what it may be looking at right now. I mean, that's just the regular size of his limbs, his arms. And then if you lift up the sweater, he has quite a muscular body underneath, with quite notably a washboard stomach. So his body really isn't all that thick. And yet, unfortunately, for how big and baggy they actually knitted this sweater, it gives Freddy, I feel, to be a very unnecessary amount of sizing, extra baggage, like I said, on the top of his torso. The knit look of the sweater is nice, and I do like the colors that NECA actually did decide to choose. But I feel if anything, the sweater is way too big, especially around the shoulders. It makes Freddy way too bulky. I mean, if I was just to put my fingers against this, just to kind of pull this back a little bit. I guess really by its nature also too, the retro cloth figures are known to have really wide shoulders anyways, so you're already taking a wide build body, and then you're putting an even bulkier, baggier sweater over top of it. It makes for Freddy looking a little more on the heftier side. The pants aren't so bad. In fact, I can just lift this up a little bit. The pants actually are Velcro. If you did decide you want to take Freddy's pants off, that's the way you do it. You just remove it by the Velcro. Pants are a little more on the scuffed up side. Not overly dirty, but at least it looks like he's actually worn these pants around. And then when it comes to, of course, Freddy's footwear, other than the disappointing nature of the fact that these feet don't actually angle back and forth, there's no ankle pivots on these older retro cloth figures. The boots at least, the shoes at least, are nicely handled here, even going as far as to sculpt the undertreads of the soles, though these figures do not have peg holes on the undersides of their feet. For the articulation here on Freddy Krueger, his head is on a ball joint, so it does look down pretty good, actually. It does look up, and you can also rock it back and forth and twist it back and forth that way as well. Shoulders do come out. Standard articulation on these older retro cloth figures. So while he does have the arms that can go forward and back, I guess really it does benefit the fact that this figure does have as baggy of a sweater as he does, because it does allow his arms to move forward and back, and they don't feel tight and constricted. So you can do that. You can bring them out that way too. Figure does have a bicep swivel. Figure does have a single hinge on the elbow, and whatever hand you decide to display him with, those rotate all the way around via those pegs. Also works the exact same way on this side too. Did we even look at Freddy's hand on the other side, literally on the other hand, just to quickly show you guys? Don't want to be accused for leaving anything off of these reviews. And for the figure's articulation, he doesn't have the upper torso ball joint. That's not here present on the older figures, but he does have at least a waist swivel. You can split the legs out, bring the legs forward and back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh, a single hinge only on the knee, and then just a single hinge only on the feet. Now, you're probably already going to see where I'm going to be going with this. The problem with these older figures that they don't have an ankle pivot is that you can't correct the way that the feet are leveled. I mean, you can already see right now, this one foot is always the case, and it always seems to be on this one side here, that the foot always is on an angle. It's never flat. It's always like this, which means getting these figures sometimes to stand can be a little bit more difficult, and you can't even really rely on a display stand either, because of course the figure doesn't have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. I can get Freddy to balance not too bad. It's more really relying on this one foot here. This foot, as you can see, is just doing its own thing. But it does cause a little bit of instability when it comes to displaying these figures. And again, one last time, just to slide this guy over. Even though this isn't the screaming head sculpt, you can at least see the two different ways that NECA has approached a Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, Freddy Krueger. Pick your poison. Of course, some people still favor the idea of getting a super articulated, super detailed plastic figure with all the accessories that come along with it. Some people also kind of lean to the idea of collecting the retro cloth figures because you get the nicely detailed faces, you get still decently articulated figures, and you get real clothing, which sometimes does work to be a better looking figure overall than what we sometimes get here with the Ultimate releases. The 1985 sequel, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, does deviate from the rules established from the first film. Now, granted, we only really had the first film to work from. There really wasn't an established franchise yet, but yet the sequel did take things in a different direction altogether. First of which, possessing the body. Second of which, possessing the body of a boy named Jesse. And through the events of what transpired in that film, before you know it, Freddy is now walking, sauntering out in the middle of a teenage barbecue. Everybody's indulging in drinks, hamburgers, and hot dogs. And here comes some decrepit old man in a striped sweater saying everybody is his children. It's a little off course. Of course, the course is corrected by the time we get back to Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors. But then, like I said, Part 2 is a little questionable, and it does split the fandom in half. It was kind of strange, the idea that this Freddy did have fingers sticking out, or blades sticking out from his fingers, as long as they were. That's one thing I do like about this figure, is the fact that he does have two different ways of displaying him. First of all, he has two different head sculpts, one that has the exposed brain, which I kind of actually lean more to the idea of displaying him with the brain. I also like the idea of displaying him with the long finger blades sticking out of his fingers. I remember I had a blind date once with a girl that had really long nails. It was awkward to sit back and watch her, even trying to pick up a spoon to stir her coffee. She was actually, I think, picking it up with the fingernails, not with her actual fingers. It was very unsettling. And all the noises that she was making while those nails were tapping the table, it was a first and only date, let me assure you that. But what do you guys think, though? First of all, what do you guys think of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? I kind of actually liked more leaning towards the direction of actually liking the film. It's a different direction of what, of course, the rest of the franchise would play out for. And I kind of like the idea that even like the house has sort of a Amityville element going for it. It's not my favorite of the Nightmare on Elm Street. That's reserved for Dream Master. But I kind of do like the charm that Freddy's Revenge brought to the table because it's so different from the rest of the movies. But again, do you guys like Freddy's Revenge? Let me know down below in the comment section. And certainly also let me know what you guys think of the retro cloth release here of Freddy. As mentioned already, I do like the idea that he comes with 2 different head sculpts, 2 different hands. I'm not super crazy the fact that his sweater is so big and bulky like this. It really makes for a fat Freddy. Fatty Freddy. Probably shouldn't have said that so loud. If not for the sweater being so big and bulky as it is, I actually like the way they frayed the ends of the sleeves, and certainly the same treatment that they did to the top and the bottom of the sweater, but it's way too bulky. Fatty Freddy. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. Have you ever even known of somebody else that has really, really long nails? Is that something we still do anymore? Do women or men? I'm not even going to just say it's for one gender. Does anybody still grow really, really long nails? Let me know down below in the comments. We're veering way off course here. Also, if you did enjoy this video, want to hit it with a like. And if you're loving the content and certainly want to stick around for more, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. Promise, I hope not to have very long nails with any future video that you guys will be checking out. You can imagine how awkward that would be to pick up tiny little accessories. I swear to you, she was just picking up everything by her nails. Seeing her awkwardly picking up a spoon, I wanted to help her, but I was also just enjoying the thing I was watching. So I sort of just let her struggle with the spoon. Definitely a lot more retro cloth figure reviews coming your way. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.